In a recent address to the nation this week, Donald Trump described the U.S. economy as strong and positioned for significant improvement going into 2026. He emphasized lower inflation, improving economic conditions, and greater confidence in the direction of the country. Those statements raise an important question for many Americans. If the economy is improving, why does housing feel so unaffordable now? In this video, we're going to do three things. First, we'll look at the economic claims being made about prices, inflation, and affordability. Second, we'll compare those claims to widely accepted housing and economic data. And third, we'll examine what was notably absent from recent remarks when it comes to housing policy and why that matters. And this is not about political messaging, it's about separating economic indicators from housing reality. So what was claimed about prices and the economy? In recent remarks, the core economic message focused on three ideas. One, inflation has come down from its peak. Two, the broader economy is improving. And three, lower costs should follow as a result. From a macroeconomic standpoint, some of these statements are partially supported by data. Inflation, as measured by widely used consumer price indexes, has declined from its highest levels seen in the early 2020s. That decline reflects easing supply chain pressures, tighter monetary policy, and slower price growth across many consumer categories. However, inflation declining does not mean prices are going down. That distinction is critical for understanding housing affordability. Inflation measures the rate of price increases, not whether prices are high or low. When inflation slows, prices are still rising, they're just rising slower. For housing, this matters because home prices have surged significantly over the past several years. Even modest price increases now occur on top of already elevated levels. So while inflation cooling is real, it does not reset housing costs. This is one of the most common misunderstandings in affordability discussions. So are homes cheaper today than they were years ago? By most national measures, home prices are still near historic highs. In many regions, prices plateaued rather than fell. Any declines were modest and uneven, and prices remained far above pre-pandemic levels. This aligns with widely reporting housing market data from multiple independent sources. Lower inflation has not translated into meaningfully lower home prices at the national level. That means affordability remains strained, even if price growth has slowed. Another common claim tied to economic optimism is that lower interest rates will restore affordability. Interest rates do affect monthly mortgage payments, and there is no dispute about that. However, rates are only one part of the affordability equation. Housing affordability depends on a few factors: the purchase price, the interest rate, the property taxes, insurance, maintenance costs, and household income. Even if mortgage rates decline modestly, elevated prices still dominate the monthly costs. Other ownership costs have also increased. And then qualification thresholds for a mortgage also remain high. Data consistently shows that mortgage payments relative to income remain historically elevated in many markets. This means a lot of people are paying the most that they can out of their paychecks for housing costs. So does the claim that a stronger economy will automatically fix housing hold up? Historically, the answer is no. Housing affordability has often worsened during strong economic periods because of a few factors. 1. Higher employment increases demand. 2. Wages often lag asset prices. And 3. Housing supply responds slowly. So strong economic growth can actually increase competition for limited housing. Without additional supply, as I've talked about in previous videos, the demand side improvements tend to raise prices rather than lower them. This is a well-documented pattern in housing economics. The central issue here is housing supply. One of the most widely agreed upon facts in housing research is that the US has a long-term housing supply shortage. As I mentioned in my previous video, Zillow and others estimate we are between 3.8 and 4.8 million homes short just to meet current demand. This shortage developed over decades due to a few factors. 1, underbuilding after the 2008 financial crisis. 2, zoning and land use restrictions. 3, rising construction costs. And 4, labor shortages in skilled trades to build homes. So as a result, new housing production has lagged population and household formation. That means entry-level and starter homes are especially scarce today. Without addressing supply, affordability pressures persist regardless of economic conditions. So now that we've talked about some of the factors that go into house affordability, let's talk about what Donald Trump missed in his recent remarks. While economic strength was emphasized, there were no detailed proposals addressing large-scale housing construction projects, federal incentives for supply expansion, zoning or land use reform, targeted affordability programs for the first-time homebuyer, or long-term cost of ownership pressure reliefs. Housing was discussed indirectly through inflation and growth rather than directly as a structural issue. From a policy analysis perspective, that omission is significant. So can affordability improve without supply growth? Economic research consistently shows that sustained housing affordability improvements require increased supply. Without more housing units, lower rates increase competition, buyer demand concentrates on limited inventory, and prices stabilize or rise rather than fall. This is why many economists caution that financial tools alone cannot resolve affordability challenges. Supply constraints dominate long-term outcomes. Another important fact often overlooked in affordability discussions is that the cost of owning a home extends beyond the loan itself. Over recent years, property taxes have increased in many jurisdictions. Insurance costs have risen, especially in high-risk areas, and maintenance and repair costs have also increased with material and labor prices increasing. These costs are independent of mortgage rates and inflation trends. Even if financing becomes significantly cheaper, total ownership costs remain elevated. Another factor in housing affordability is not just the cost of the home itself, but the amount of money the family is bringing in through income. So are wages catching up to housing costs? Well, while wages have grown in nominal terms, housing costs have grown faster in most markets. Data consistently shows that home prices increased at a faster rate than the median household income did. Down payment requirements also remain a major barrier to home ownership, and debt-to-income ratios for buyers are even more stretched than ever before. This gap is a core driver of the affordability stress, particularly for first-time homebuyers. So with all of these facts outlined, what does this mean is in the future for 2026? Looking ahead based on current trends and publicly available data, economic growth alone is unlikely to restore housing affordability. Lower inflation also does not reverse prior price increases, and rate declines may help some buyers, but it will increase competition for others. So supply constraints remain the dominant factor in this issue. Without targeted housing policy or significant increases in construction, affordability challenges are likely to persist. Why does political messaging often miss housing reality? Well, housing markets operate on long timelines. Policy changes take years to impact supply. Construction takes time. Zoning changes also face local resistance. As a result, housing affordability rarely responds quickly to macroeconomic shifts or political messaging. This creates a disconnect between economic narratives and lived housing experiences. So what do the facts show? Based on widely accepted data and housing economics, inflation declining does not mean housing is cheaper. Home prices remain historically high, and rates matter, but they are not the main constraint. Housing supply shortages will continue to drive long-term affordability issues. And no major housing-specific plan has been outlined in recent remarks. So these facts help explain why optimism about the economy does not automatically translate into relief for homebuyers. So housing affordability is not solved by economic confidence alone. It requires time, supply growth, structural reform, and targeted policy focus on housing specifically. Until those conditions change, affordability challenges are likely to remain regardless of broader economic performance. Understanding this gap between economic claims and housing data is essential for anyone trying to make sense of today's market. If you found this breakdown useful, feel free to leave a comment. And if you want more data-driven explanations of housing trends without speculation or hype, consider subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.